This is so vivid, all this, from 39 years ago. And stuff doing the book when I'm having to research and go back and things that, you know, looking at pictures of fish you don't even know where they're from. But that start of the mangrove, those first 2 years, and then the start of birch, I suppose the start of, it's like a new romance in it, like an infatuation.
It's funny thinking back. I think nostalgia can be a little bit overplayed at times, but I feel really fortunate to have grown up carp fishing in the early 90s when everything was still really mysterious. There wasn't much available to read. There was barely anything to watch. You know, there was just a few books, a few things floating around out there, and being a northerner really, I was always drawn to the northern lakes, and yeah, the mangrove was kind of one of the few really that ever got written about. I was fascinated by Tim Paisley's early writings, partly I think probably because they really appealed to me, because some of the lakes felt quite similar to the ones that I was fishing, but also just because it held, the mangrove in particular had this mystique, this sort of allure. The location was never really revealed, didn't really know where it was, and the fish were huge as well, you know, for the north back then, mid-upper 30s. It seems so commonplace now, but back then, they truly were rare beasts, and they were big on a national scale as well. Fish like scaly, conan, trio, those old big uns were really, really big fish for the early 90s. And I think the mangrove was one of the first lakes that really implanted itself in my childhood imagination. It's a long old drive for me to get down here. Coming up from Bournemouth, good 4-hour drive, 170 mile, I think it was, something like that. I was really keen to see dawn on my first day. Always am, great time of day to spot fish, and yeah, I decided to make the drive down in the evening instead. Arrived just after dark, which I think always just adds a little bit to the sense of expectation as well. Lovely to wake up just on the grass as well, you know, just bivvied up in front of the van with no rods out. Looking forward to a few days fishing and somewhere that I'd wanted to fish for 30 years, which seems incredible to say. I don't really feel that old, but yeah, over 30 years ago, I was looking at pictures of this place. I'd literally have given a limb to have fished here back then. There wasn't a hope in hell of getting a chance of a night on here back then. So yeah, I was really excited about a few days fishing here. Yeah, you weren't like, you're looking at 1 or 2, aren't you, from the look of it? One night in West End, nothing. Lightning Tree, 2. Yeah, tough going. Not a right lot to go on. But I reckon probably Falling Tree or Lightning Tree. Bit of past autumn form. Always quite fancied fishing one of them swims as well.
Well, the mangrove is the code name for Martin Mere, which is just outside Baz Church. So there are 4 Ice Age meres. The mangrove is one of them, a 15-acre mere with Norfolk reeds and lily pads all the way around it. Very, very natural water, on farmland, owned by the Gwilts. Bill Gwilt was still alive when I first went there. Dave Preston took me there because he felt, the Dave Preston, took me there when he was still a student then. Felt he owed me a favour for getting me into Course Angler, writing in Course Angler. And we started in '83, Dave took me on. We were the only people fishing the water, which was quite unbelievable because I'd moved on from Snowbury. I was in love with carp fishing. I was struggling for carp waters at that time. So this water, which had been stocked by the Stone brothers, which Ray Stone is still alive, his brother Reg died a few years back, bless him. They stocked those 4 meres from the Isle at Shrewsbury, which is a very, very prolific breeding water, and I think a lot of waters in the northwest. It wouldn't be done now, but it was in the early 70s when they stocked those 4 waters. And I've just done my homework for the carpology series I'm doing, and they moved 1,900 and odd carp from the Isle at Shrewsbury over a 2-year period to those 4 waters, and they started that wonderful little quadrilateral of carp waters just outside Baz Church.
In terms of the fishing prospects, dawn unfortunately didn't really reveal anything actually. Was obviously hoping to see a few, the big silty meres, renowned obviously for shows and activity, be that fizzing, fish showing, so I was really hoping to see a few. Unfortunately, didn't see any, but it was just lovely to be here. So just fired the kettle up, had a couple of coffees, and more than anything, just took it all in. I think the nature of the lake really dictates that there feels like there's no rush to a session on here. Like thinking back to some of Tim's early writing and the way he talked about the sessions and the trips, you really get that sense of there being no rush. Once you're through the field, down the track, and pulled up on the grass, it's only ever likely to be another couple of lads fishing. There's no rush, no racing for swims. You kind of feel like you're in your own little world when you're down here. Yeah, straight into the bench really. It's going to be completely consistent as well for the next 3 days. It's just staying north-northwest. I think gusting to like 20s, I think it said. Obviously most lakes you just grab a bucket or a water bottle, head off, go for a walk and see what you see. On here that's not an option, so loaded all the kit straight into the boats and got out on the water. Spoke to one of the lads that was fishing a little bit further down because we were going to have to cross through his swim, which on here must always be a kind of perpetual issue. You can't get to some of the swims without crossing through some of the other lads' water. So went and had a little chat with him, which is really nice. Kind of helped me get my bearings as well with the lake and a little bit about what had been happening. And yeah, boated down past him, down towards the stream and the end with Lightning Tree and Fallen Tree, which were the free swims, and just started having a kind of gentle, quiet cruise around the margins. It became obvious really, really quickly that it's really shallow at the moment. I think because of the heat this summer, I think it's probably about 2 foot down on what it would be normally. So, the margins that would perhaps be 4, 5, 6 foot were only 2, 3, 4 foot deep. So it was a lot shallower in the edges than I anticipated. But one thing that did do, which was really quite handy, was allowing me, just with my net pole that I had to hand in the boat, was just to start having a little prod around. Yeah, the bottom's like really soft, but just with stones, like what feel like quite big chunky stones. It's like it's usually black. It's like a really rich, like oaky brown colour. It just feels like got crust, bits of stones on top. They feel like big chunky stones though. Don't feel like nice for fishing over, but then I reckon you could push that 10 foot down into the silt, 15 foot down, just a little crust on top. And then gone. Look at that. Yeah, a little bit of muscle in there. Maybe some of it's not stone actually. Maybe it's muscle. Just literally smells of nothing. It's lovely and clean.
All these waters are far more than just carp waters. There is a history to them. You're in touch with something more remote.
I feel really fortunate to have grown up carp fishing in the early 90s when everything was still really mysterious. The mangrove in particular had this mystique, this sort of allure. God, that sky is incredible. The location was never really revealed, and the fish were huge as well for the north back then. The whole point of coming here was to come to the mangrove, just to basically relive some childhood dreams, sit in some of the same swims that I'd looked at photos of 100 times, see a couple of mangrove sunrises and sunsets, and hopefully catch one, which I did manage to do.